you've seen it online or heard about it. Brad's a big enthusiast of speed and has done a lot in the motorcycle world. But this was a big task for him, and it was my job to keep him safe and to simplify what you need to know and what you don't need to know. And production really did an amazing job of bringing in everybody that was needed and nobody that wasn't, and it was very streamlined. It was so organized. I've seen a lot of wild stuff in my years at Le Mans, some stuff I want to forget, but it challenges you. I mean, they ask, what is it really? What's that dopamine rush? What is that adrenaline hit that you chase? And it's just stepping on the edge of insanity or danger and walking that line. And Le Mans in the middle of the night is definitely that. All versions of street cars. We love resto mods, we love survivors, we love highly modified, outlawed, you name it. And we use information to educate what these cars mean and what all these numbers that Porsche enthusiasts talk about. What's a 911 versus a 914 versus a 962? It really is a lot. Hey, I'm Patrick Long, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
What a pleasure, as a fellow Porsche fan, to have the Porsche guy on the program. It's the first time that we've had Patrick with us. Welcome into Cars and Culture, Patrick.
Jason, I appreciate it. Yeah, I've listened to your show and heard many people talking about it in my travels, and great to be here.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that you are generally absorbed with everything that goes into Luftgekühlt, and we'll spend some time on that number 10 that just occurred. But I think, we just had Greg Maffei on the program recently, the head of Liberty Media and all things Formula One. We have to kind of start with the movie, don't we? I know you can't talk a lot about it, but you've been hanging out with some pretty cool people recently. Tell me how you got into the consulting gig on the Formula One movie.
Yeah, Joe Kosinski, the director, who of course did Top Gun Maverick, is a Porsche enthusiast. He drives a 911, and he's such a great human being. And I was introduced to him through Owen Shively, who works with Porsche in all things Hollywood. If you see Porsches in Hollywood on the big screen, Owen's had his hands in that. And just started out as a coffee in Malibu, and Joe said, look, I need somebody to help me out for some of these scenes with the lead actor, getting him up to speed, being able to take the race car out on the track. And so, yeah, towing the line of my confidentiality agreements, we were known to be in Daytona for the Rolex 24. I spent 3.5 weeks on set, and I have done some movies, commercials, and different stuff through my life, and especially with Porsche, but never had I been in a production of that scale with the professionalism and organization. The stunts were amazing. I had my hand in it. I've been on the program consulting them for about 2 years now. So it was great to have multiple roles, helping out on the stunt team, also with training the lead cast. And I think it's going to be unbelievable. It's no secret that there's some sports car goings on in conjunction with Formula One. And I think a lot of people have seen the preview that they put out this summer. And it's definitely an action scene extravaganza when it comes to race cars. They are doing things that are testing new waters. So it's super fun.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. I happened to be standing on the starting grid, before the Austin race last year, and there was a rather attractive male actor who many know hanging around there observing. And of course, Brad Pitt's already been in the trailer, so that part's well known. Tell me, just what was it like hanging out with him?
Yeah, he's great. It was super fun. Right away, I found a great connection with him. We were joking around, but also very serious and loves driving. And that part is always fun when you're working with a student. We were over preparing, and I got to kind of direct how I was going to expose him to the track and driving 911s at speed. Every bit of that is part of what I do. I love sort of coming and breaking down the strategy of like, what's the experience level of the driver and what's the end goal of the driver or their team. And it reminded me of working with Patrick Dempsey when he really had this dream of being on the podium at Le Mans. And you sort of have to work backwards from that end goal, like anything in life or business. And I love seeing results realized. That is more gratifying for me than even my own personal career as a racing driver. That human level of team and achievement is unbelievable. So yeah, part of stepping out of the race car at the end of 2021 full time was to give myself more time to doing some of these special projects. And when this call came to work on the new F1 movie, it was definitely one of those too good to be true moments where you were hoping that something between concept and reality didn't get in the way and interrupt your dreams of sort of being on the high banks of Daytona with the who's who of a stunt team and the lead actor. That part of it was spectacular.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's one thing to have a student; it's another to have a student who's a lead actor, and somebody who's so willing to listen and adapt and learn. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's you've seen it online or heard about it. Brad's a big enthusiast of speed and has done a lot in the motorcycle world. But this was a big task for him, and it was my job to keep him safe and to simplify what you need to know and what you don't need to know. And production really did an amazing job of bringing in everybody that was needed and nobody that wasn't. And it was very streamlined. It was so organized. When I think about my other day job being running events, it's all about that coordination of people and prep and communication. And on a production of that level, it's so inspiring for me to take little bits and pieces of how they manage time and how they manage logistics. Being at the Rolex 24 and the magnitude of that event, and then having a film production of that scale running in conjunction with the race. And for us to be doing scenes during the actual Rolex 24 was an unbelievable undertaking. But Brad is such a cool customer. I mean, watching his acting and how he gets in that zone really reminded me of motorsport. You're on the grid. There's media, there's family, there's friends, there's competition that are staring you in the eyes, and you're balancing all of those different distractions, and a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy is consumed with the pre-race or any of the goings on leading into the race. And then when you strap your helmet on, you have to sort of step out of one set of shoes and into another and become a different persona. And Brad was everybody on the team of the production was super impressive about its go time. And it really did take me back to my pro career. But yeah, being on the road with those guys and posted up for 3.5 weeks, I sort of have a general rule with my family that I try not to spend more than 5 nights away at one time. And this time I was posted up in Daytona for 3.5 weeks. And it really makes me respect the whole film world and how much commitment they make to time. And being in a different world for that amount of time. I mean, obviously Daytona isn't too far away from my home. I spent, I think maybe 18 years in a row doing the Rolex 24. So I knew my way around town, and I loved how they can sort of bake in that proper rest time, but still being available should we have to jump into a meeting or discuss something. You're still very much on set, but definitely have to rest and get away from it a little while, recharge. And yeah, just grateful for that experience, and certainly grew in a lot of different ways.
God, what a crazy experience! Crazy experience. I mean, not only the people who you were working alongside, but the fact that you really hit on it, and we've seen so much posted on social media. The filming that's gone on with that movie during other races that are occurring. I think Silverstone was another example too. That's complicated. It's coordinated. It's dangerous, right, Patrick? I mean, there's so much that's occurring at the same time. What a complex world.
Yeah, I mean, credit to them and to Formula One and to IMSA for all figuring out how to achieve that. And I've seen many clips online of them traveling all summer and last summer during Formula One races. And as everybody knows, Formula One is very tight on access. I remember racing as a support series to Formula One in the early 2000s, living abroad, and it didn't matter who you were. Like, if it was your time to be on track, you had access, and then as soon as that session was over, you couldn't go anywhere. Everything was locked. And then more recently visiting with Pirelli over to the British GP and having all access, you realize how policed the paddock is at most
Yeah.
events, because the drivers do walk around freely because it's really staff only. And so there's good and bad of that. I mean, many people have debated access of Formula One and how hard it is to get up close and personal if you compare it to IndyCar, NASCAR, or sports car racing. But I understand it. But at the same time, I think Liberty Media has really dug into creating more access for people from the outside world to get up close and personal with the pinnacle of our sport. No one really debates that Formula One, from a numbers and scale, is the icon in motorsport, and love every bit of it. You can debate different technology, different restrictions and rules, and where the cars are, but being at a Formula One race is still extra special. And the last 25 years, I've seen it in different versions in different countries, and been up close and personal with it, and it still gives you that buzz of this is the real deal.
A lot of people might not know that long ago, you really caught the eye of Red Bull in the inaugural Red Bull Formula One driver search. Are you amazed at how far and wide F1 has now moved into the American sports psyche?
Amazed. Yeah, that's an understatement. When I sort of walked up to the gates of Formula One, thanks to Danny Sullivan and Red Bull, that was 2002. And really the talk of the town was, we have a USGP, that being in Indianapolis, but the sport isn't really resonating with the American race fan. And how are we going to do that? And that was really the catalyst for Formula One, for Red Bull to step up into Formula One with an American program. And what they did was go out and scour every short track in America, every road racing track in America. I think they probably looked at RC car racers. And when they came forward with a group of 16 young Americans, and one of those was going to go to Formula One, that was an exciting call. It didn't work out. Jump to the end. It didn't work out for me with Red Bull. I wasn't what they were looking for. But the most fortunate break in my life and in my career was that Porsche was watching what Red Bull and the Austrians were doing with Danny, and they were invited to come along to that final shootout where we went from 16 down to 6 and then to 4 drivers. And although I was pretty upset, and I've told this story many times, I went to Monaco to my old karting roommate, Nico Rosberg's place, and sort of drowned in my sorrows not getting that final cut, making it to the final 6, and then not being one of the 4 that went on to the next round. The phone rang, and that was Porsche, and they said, come to Weissach, see what we do, get in one of our race cars, and we'll see how you do, and then we'll have a discussion. And so, yeah, no mystery that it worked out with Porsche.
Yeah, and then the rest was history. And then all of a sudden, you're firmly immersed in the Porsche world, which I know was not a disappointment for you, based on what you liked as a kid growing up, based on the posters you had on your wall, based on what you thought of the brand. But you could not have anticipated, Patrick, that it would take you this far. I'm guessing.
No, I mean, as a Southern California kid, my dad and our family was in construction. He was a surfer, so we knew nothing about motorsport. I was always at the short tracks of Southern California growing up at Ascot and Ventura, watching sprint cars and midgets. And one of your recent guests, Tony Stewart, racing a midget on a Saturday night. So I loved all aspects of motorsport. And if I could just make it as a professional driver anywhere, I probably would have jumped at it. But never did I ever dream that I would represent Porsche for 18 years as their lone American on the team, and see 5 continents of motorsport in all realms. And one of the really cool parts of being a sports car driver for Porsche was it opened a lot of doors into other opportunities to drive, whether it was Baja or NASCAR or V8 supercars. I got to race at the top level of so many different disciplines. And growing up, Dan Gurney was a hero of mine. Mario Andretti, Pernelli Jones, even Robbie Gordon. I loved drivers that could get into anything and go fast, and I wanted to model my career after that. So although my my main focus was Porsche, and it was mostly in the American Le Mans series and going over to Le Mans in June. I always had sort of an eye for the off-season opportunities to just mainly experience these cars and to be on the starting grid with some of the heroes like Jimmy Johnson and lining up at Watkins Glen. Although it was just a toe in the water exercise, having a NASCAR Cup start or a V8 supercar start at Surfers Paradise, those were all doors that were open through the opportunity from Porsche to race. And in sports car racing, there was huge opportunity to meet my heroes on track and rub wheels. And that was super special. The Rolex 24 always felt like a little bit of a race of champions at the opening season, where drivers from other disciplines were joining in those 4-driver lineups and going for overall wins in the Daytona prototype days. So many different memories. But to answer your question, no, it was always kind of an imposter syndrome experience where I just never really dreamt of growing up in suburbia LA and getting to race for a prominent brand like Porsche. I mean, they say Porsche is one of the top 5 most recognized brands across the board in anything. And the greatest part about racing and being an ambassador for Porsche is that it really is an international language anywhere you go in the world. I've never really been to a place in the world where there wasn't a Porsche community that I could link up with and see somebody's collection or hear their story and remain in touch with them. So that's been the big gift.
What a gift, and a gift to win at all 4 sports car classics, as they say, right? The 24-hour Le Mans, 05 and 07, Rolex 24 at Daytona a couple of years later, Petit Le Mans in between there, and the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring. Out of those, I know this is a hard question, but what are each one of those? What's different about each one of those, or what's the most challenging out of each one of those, and maybe what's the most gratifying?
Yeah, it's hard to break them down because they're such individual races. They have so many decades of legacy tied to them, and they're very different tactically when you go at them as a race team. Obviously, the Rolex 24 was the start of our season in all of my professional years for Porsche, and chasing that watch was a pretty big bucket list item for me. I had come so close with the Ruby Tuesday Alex Job years of coming from laps down back to lead and then dropping back, and just the classic endurance races of the early 2000s where it still really was a type of endurance racing where the car could have an issue, where the drivers could make a mistake and come back from laps down and still challenge because the cars weren't as reliable as they are today. Sebring, just such a tough, physically, mentally demanding race. My memories of going to Sebring 2006 and suiting up for Roger Penske in the RS Spider program, that's definitely one of the biggest memories in my career. Roger was a hero that I grew up watching Memorial Day weekend with my dad and waking up super early to watch him in Gasoline Alley. And then Le Mans, what can you say? I mean, that's really probably the biggest memory. It's 400,000 people, one of the largest spectacle sports around, and so international and so fast. That racetrack, everybody hears the word Le Mans, about the Steve McQueen movie, but once you get out there on the Mulsanne Straight, you realize how fast you're going. So that one and the end of the race, standing on the podium over everybody who's been let onto the racetrack, all the spectators and fans. Yeah, it's hard to pick one, but I guess I would go with Le Mans. It's the halo event for sports car racing.
Yeah, totally. And in fact, we talked to Jimmy when he went over with John Doonan and the Garage 56, the NASCAR team there a couple of years ago. What an experience all of that was. Jensen driving as well. What struck me about it first time being there, and fortunately there on the 100th anniversary, was just the spectacle of it all and the feeling of it and the smell in the air and the 24 hours. It is, if you haven't been, right, Patrick, it is absolutely racing's brass ring, isn't it?
It is. And the wild thing is it's a street race. I mean, they shut the streets down when you go to practice and qualify, and leading into the race, you're doing all that at night because, of course, most of the track is public roads and they need all that access for big rig trucks to drive down the moles on any given day. And it's just it's a race you almost ask yourself, how is this still allowed to happen? It's,
Right.
you're going through different weather systems, you're going in and out of different townships, you see signs on the side of the racetrack, welcome to Molzon village. And it's incredible. You're out there for hours on end in the middle of the night, and it's sort of like being on a highway, and there's very little traffic and there's no speed limit, and you're just booking along. There's four different classes out there, so different cars passing different classes at different times, and huge closing rate speeds. I've seen a lot of wild stuff in my years at Le Mans. Some stuff I want to forget, but it challenges you. I mean, they ask, what is it really? What's that dopamine rush? What is that adrenaline hit that you chase? And it's just stepping on the edge of insanity or danger, and walking that line. And Le Mans in the middle of the night is definitely that.
Yeah, well said. Well said. 10th anniversary, Luftgekühlt, as it's known. And for those who don't know what that means, it means air cooled soul. And in the Porsche vernacular, that also represents all of the air cooled cars in the manufacturer's history. That spans extraordinary period of time, and really from the company's inception all the way through 1998. Tell our listeners why and how. It's your brainchild, working alongside Howie Idelson. Why and how?
Luftgekühlt was just a idea of how could we rethink our parents' car show. When I went to the local car show in Westlake Village, California, as a 6 or a 7-year-old, I loved looking at cars, but I also remember asking myself, now what do I do? I've sort of seen all the cars. It's just a strip mall parking lot. Where do we go from here? And fast forward, to buying my first vintage air-cooled Porsche and getting in that car and understanding why the classic model line of Porsche is so addictive. It's basically that it takes you back to your first exposures of driving a car. It's so visceral. The car is so small. You hear and smell and see. The windshield is very close to your face. You can reach over and touch the passenger door, and you're driving public roads, but you feel like you're in a race car. And I wanted to share all of these stories and experiences, but I also wanted to learn more about all the different models and stories and engine styles. And so I just started to ponder if I could entertain the idea of introducing people who are not from the Porsche world to the classic Porsche cars and stories and all the humans and legends behind it. And the end result was 40 cars at a very cool coffee shop in Venice Beach, California, and a couple hundred people that I sort of knew and was able to email and say, hey, if you're around on Sunday morning at 10:30, come by for some tacos and beer and some music. Bring your family, bring your dogs, and check out the cars that I've curated with some friends to tell the entirety story of what Porsche did from the late 40s to the late 90s with the air-cooled era. And what we ended up with was, as far as the eye could see, Porsches lined down each side of Lincoln Boulevard in West LA. And I knew we were on to something, because those cars weren't even part of the show. They had just heard or seen through Instagram that there was something going on at a little coffee shop at Deus Ex Machina. And yeah, we were off. From there, it's been a decade of me just sort of trying to keep up with the demand and the ideas and the introductions and the invites to bring our show around the world. We've been to Austria, Germany. This year we're in Denmark, in Poland, but we've really harnessed and anchored this brand in Southern California. We do an annual gathering of multiple hundreds of cars and thousands of people who pay to come and not so much look at cars, but just to experience an amazing day out. And we curate the cars in sort of photographical moments, work very closely with a longtime friend of mine who I met through motorsport, Jeff Swart. And it's all about bringing, yeah, he's a legend in his own right, photographer, racer at Pikes Peak, film director. And yeah, we've just evolved this and tried to keep up with the enthusiasm that is behind the brand, but we always lay out our experiences in our shows with the non-Porsche owner in mind. You know, where our idea is for people to come, experience, learn, connect, and the cars are sort of the reason we all gather, sort of like a sports team and the enthusiasm between a sports team and human. But the human relationships and the social scene is what we thrive off of. And then after the show, all the results that you see on social media and these frameable photos of legendary race cars from Porsche's history, collectible street cars, all versions of street cars. We love resto mods, we love survivors, we love highly modified, outlawed, you name it. And we use information to educate what these cars mean and what all these numbers that Porsche enthusiasts talk about. What's a 911 versus a 914 versus a 962? It really is a lot. In the beginning, I remember living in Germany in my first year with Porsche and just going to their little internal library and studying books to try and understand the history and the chronological past of what they've done. And then we've started to evolve and really understand that there's another story to tell past 1998, and that's everything that's happening around the Porsche automobile race and street these days.
Has it even amazed you, the momentum? Has it just blown you away?
Yes, amazed is a positive word. Sometimes overwhelmed, but all the time grateful that this we're still riding this wave. As you mentioned, I co-founded the brand with a longtime friend that I met in the karting world, Howie Idelson. But every single way that this event and this brand has grown is through the network that I talked about earlier. You know, most people on the team at Luft, whether that's Jeff or James Longstaff, Mark Hotchkiss, these are all people that I met through the Porsche network one way or another. And the team is 400 large on our big events. And it's a lot of responsibility, but it's been such a great journey for myself. I'm not formally educated. I left home at 16 to go race in Europe, and I don't have a college degree. So I've had to learn everything from sourcing cotton for our apparel line to disaster relief plans so that you can go in front of the city council and tell them you want to shut down a section of Indianapolis to have a show at the Bottle Works district. So yeah, every bit of it's been a gift of education and network.
Amazing. Road and Track called it the most ambitious car show in the world. That's high praise, Patrick.
Yeah, it's again rethinking what people think of with the stigmas of car shows and trying to break that open, and lucky to have inspired a lot of other brands to change direction or to create their own unique experiences and just to share car enthusiasm with all walks of life. We remember, if you're a car or racing fan, you remember your first days and being dragged along, likely with a family member. So we're trying to create the next generation.
Yeah, it's actually we've all seen in the last, I don't know what, 10 or 15 years, just the expansion of the cars and coffee sort of concept, which when I was growing up wasn't even a thing. I would have loved to have had the opportunity to do cars and coffee. This is the ultimate cars and coffee. Tell me a little bit about Air and Water.
So Air Water has a little bit of a different format. It's a sister brand to Luftgekühlt. The idea here is there's so much in the Porsche world from the subject matter standpoint, but there's also a different experience to give that we wanted to provide past just a glorified cars and coffee, with art and creativity and photography as the main goal. With Air Water, it's of course celebrating everything Porsche from all generations to completely modern. That includes four-door, overland, electric, four-door, electric, overland, 911s of water cooled and air cooled. The idea of a live auction, of exhibitor trade, and being at a campus that we can grow from year on year. So that show takes place in Orange County, California at the end of April. And it's, again, just taking that first decade of what we've done at Luftgekühlt and expanding into new horizons and new journeys and new challenges. So yeah, the first event, standalone event, was this year, 2024, and we had 1,100 Porsches. It was wall to wall, but beyond that, Broad Arrow brought in their live auction, and people got to experience that for many the first time. And just, again, making it up as we go, trying to keep things fresh and trying to feed the enthusiasm that Porsche brings to the next generation. And there was a lot of debate: do the kids today really care about cars? You know, they don't have their driver's license. The ICE, internal combustion engine cars are dying. All that talk, I think, has really silenced in the last few years, because social media introduces the next generation to these cars that we had on our walls as posters as kids. Now they have them on their Instagram feed. So it's great to try to be a little bit of a vehicle to, again, just giving people their own experience when they come out for a fun day.
You said once that if you think about it, racing drivers are a spoiled crop. We show up last, we leave first. Everything is kind of produced. There's a series that's there, tents are built, things like that. What is it about Luft that really you appreciate about the energy and attention that goes into it, and maybe what you've learned throughout the process?
I think the juxtaposition of a racing driver is very interesting, because early on you think about lap times and results, and wow, it's all what I can do speed wise. And the longer I was in my career, the more I understood how many people put in so many hours to prepare that team and make that team and race car run and be there at the end. And you respect the aspect of preparation meets opportunity, and then you have luck and results. And coming at it from a promoter angle and from a business owner angle, having your own team of people and your own gate and people coming through the gate to see what you've created. Racing and events, it's one and the same. There's a time and a place where this event's happening, whether you're ready or not. But I love the aspect of scalability, different than being a driver, where really all I can add to it is my singular job of getting in and doing my job behind the wheel and working with the engineers in developing the car. Now I have the idea and the task of getting that team of all-stars put together and on the same page to achieve that same success that you wake up Monday morning and hope the result was what you were planning for. So yeah, it's an incredible journey, like I mentioned, in education, and very gratifying in a different way than motorsport, but with a lot of similar parallels.
And in fact, when you talk about it, and the concept beyond the cars themselves, you're really featuring engineers, designers, executives, racers, builders, people who have made this well-loved brand into what it is on the planet. What could be next for Luft? I know you're already thinking about it.
I work on a 1, 3, 5 year program, set out the goals for myself and for the team, where I want to be in those time plots, and just rehashing my second 5 year plan right now. The first one I sort of drafted up during the pandemic, and that was really about sort of one step back to go two forward. And very proud that all the goals were achieved, both in the digital sense and also from a subjective sense. Next is letting air water fly and achieve what I believe it can achieve. And the vision of air water is the largest single branded car experience on the planet. I want this to be a very long weekend or a week long experience where no matter what your love for cars or Porsche is, it's something you want to check out, and somewhere that you will travel from many miles away to see and to experience. And I think that there's some great gatherings, especially abroad, with Technoclassica, events in Europe that I hear about that people have flown to from all over the world, not only to see what's there and to do business at a trade aspect, but also to again just connect with their network of people who share that common bond but live in many worlds away. I think we had 30 countries and 49 states in attendance at our show this year, if I'm remembering correctly. And I love that aspect of it, and I want to scale it. And it's a competitive part of me that loves goal oriented results. But I have to remember also on a human level, the idea here is if the legends of the motorsport scene and the road car scene for that matter, whether it's designers or engineers as you named, if they don't want to show up, or the first timers who are not that interested, if my wife Lauren and her girlfriends aren't asking for tickets to this event, then we have to adjust the temperature a little bit and make sure that we're not getting too much into the car aficionado space. It has to have a little bit of everything, but I think the bookends are the legends and the first timers, and then the car crazy are the ones right in the middle. And of course, we have to keep things fresh for them and keep telling new stories, keep bringing fresh content forward, building merchandise and art and posters and things that people want to put in their living room, let alone their man cave or their car garage. It's just that nature of competition from motorsport, where you never really rest on your laurels or your successes, because you know that the competition is aiming for you, and that just it's ingrained in me. I've known from my years at Porsche that you never let up. There's always going to be a faster driver coming up who's more qualified and fitter and smarter and better looking, and you just have to keep the hammer down and hit it one day at a time hard.
Bruce Meyer, never lift.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. The inspiration. I mean, that guy, he's in his 80s, I believe. Not to
Oh,
expose your age, Bruce, but his energy and enthusiasm has never wavered, and I'm inspired by that, because there's goals and records and achievements, but in the end, you got to live your life, and you got to find your purpose, and what makes it burn in your belly, and what makes you pumped to get out of bed and to get out there and charge. And I talked about this in my motorsport career and stepping out of the race car. You've got ego. You've got what ego does for you. It's not all negative. That's what makes racing drivers go out and want to show their speed lap after lap and to try and win championship after championship. But you've also got your purpose. And I believe your purpose is what you're called to do, what you really believe you're out there to achieve. And so when you see someone like Bruce Meyer, who's so pumped and so stoked and so enthusiastic, you realize that that's the goal, whatever you're doing in life.
he's a total inspiration. Absolutely. Final few questions on some car culture. I believe, Patrick, that car culture is alive and well and roaring louder than ever. But you tell me.
Yeah, like I said, the social media aspect is wild to watch. I don't spend a ton of time on social media, but I keep up on it, sort of like the news, and watch the trends and see what the next generation is resonating with and commenting on and posting. And I think all generations connect with the automobile. Driving it is still the real love for me. Taking a 1950s 356 out through the canyons and the Santa Monica Mountains, it's again that reconnection to feeling like a kid again, and having that moving picture frame being your windshield, and seeing the world, whether it's a road trip in a rental car or a little rip through the canyons because you only have a lunch break to get a bit of that dopamine hit. I love it. I still love every aspect of it, from the racetrack to just cruising in a 50 horsepower 4-cylinder pushrod engine for a coffee with my 6-year-old daughter. It's a part of my life. It always will be. Still racing on the side, just doing fun stuff these days, and trying to help people achieve their dreams and goals in the race car. So yeah, it's that journey, and what the car enthusiasm provides to get you connected on the human level, and also to go fast on racetrack. I still love to jump into a vintage race car and listen to it and feel it and try to make it better. So I think the racing world is in the right frame. I think that there are some race series that maybe need a little bit of adjustment, but it's a moving target, and I don't envy the position of organizers and owners of race series. And I just will always be part of my life and enjoy the heck out of it.
What are you working on these days in your garage?
Um, Behind me are a few projects that always need something. I was once told, be careful what you wish for with classic cars. They're sort of like living animals. They have personalities and needs, and they need to be exercised and fed. And I'm one of those types of drivers that understood that one of our jobs was to bring feedback back to the experts, to the engineers, to your crew. And so when I drive one of the classics behind me, I'm taking notes, and that list never stops. There's always little vibrations. There's little tweaks to the diff or to the dampers that make these things more fun, more reliable, and easier to drive. So yeah, 72 911, 57 356, and 1996 911, which is the 993 year. Go slow, go fast, go far is my theme. To have a Canyon Ripper, a slow 4-cylinder 50s car, and then something that has great working air conditioning, 4 seats for the family, 6-speed. It's amazing to think what a 90s Porsche drives like today. It really is a modern car. It's a little more analog. It's a little smaller and easier to park, but they were well ahead of their time in the late 90s, and loving the 993. One project that's just coming to completion now is a 66 911 hot rod. It's stone gray in color, and I'll be posting that on my social media channels in the coming months as we roll that car out for the first time after a many year restoration down to the bare metal. It was one of those cars you find on Craigslist that in the 80s and 90s went through very many versions, and basically the 1960s of that car was gone, but the metal was still completely original and solid. And so I took that leap of faith of going all the way back to the start, to the core shell. And yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, amazing. Anything that you want that you don't have?
Whew, more time in a day and in the week. On the car side, I've been looking a lot at turbo cars. 50th anniversary of Porsche's turbo this year. I've owned a 930 in the past and very much missed that 930. But 930s, although they're called the Widowmaker and they're known as the giant killer of speed, they're actually pretty docile to drive. So a hot rod 930, something that again steps close to that edge of comfort and fear, is definitely a car that I have my eye on. But no, pretty focused right now on business and not getting as much time to play with vintage cars. But as my kids get a little bit older, they've made it very clear to me that they want to go more in the old cars and go back out into the canyons that are behind me here. So I look forward to those days.
And for those who have never been, when is the next Luft?
2025 is shaping up. We haven't announced our dates, but we are pretty well signed for the end of April for air water. Look for that before the end of the year to roll out with some more information. The Costa Mesa area in Orange County Fairgrounds turned out to be a dream venue for us. Fairgrounds don't sound very sexy, but when you see this facility, if you've not been there, it's incredible. It's certainly beyond a fairground, and it has acres of buildings and different backdrops and settings. So that's the big focus on the production and what the weekly calls are about right now. And then we've got a little bit of a twist of normalcy for Luftgekühlt in 2025, early October, and going to go back on the road. Love Southern California, but you're hearing it here first. If I have my way with the team, we'll be in a new part of the country for what will introduce a playground for a lot of people who maybe haven't had their cars involved in our show yet or haven't brought one of their collectible race cars out. So very excited about that. And we'll be putting all that news through our website, luftgekühlt.com and air-water.com.
Excellent. Patrick Long, what a pleasure to have you on the program. You are car culture. You personify it. You're creating it. You're cultivating it. You are nurturing it. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jason, I appreciate you having me. It's been great chatting with you. And yeah, those are big words, but I'll try to live up to them.
You already have. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.